So one thing that mining solves is how to order the transactions. We have something called blockchain. I think you heard about that. But to make sure that nobody can create more blockchains and we have one single truth, the mining was introduced to make creation of money hard and connected to reality and to physical reality of energy. What mining is doing is making sure that digital money is connected to the physical world in terms of energy. Why energy? Because that's something we cannot create out of whim. Because somebody, and before Satoshi there was other projects, somebody can say, okay, let's create a protocol where if somebody want to order transactions, we will be voting who will be the one ordering. With voting and with democracy, you know how it works. A lot of populism, you can create fake emails and go voting, online many times and so on. So there are a bunch of other problems. Satoshi realized to make sure it's not able to be copied and faked, we need to use something that cannot be created as well, and that's energy. So that's how we have the anchor to reality, and this is why I don't like proof of stake, because I don't see a true anchor to reality. With mining, of Bitcoin mining, we have the anchor with the energy. The second problem that mining is solving is coin distribution. How to make sure that there is no one person owning all the coins and selling to everybody else, which is happening most of the time with new tokens, where the token holder or token creator has all the tokens and then he's selling to people on exchanges or everywhere on the internet and getting money for it. Satoshi was inspired by gold, because gold is something that doesn't have a central bank. We can barely say that the central bank of gold is our planet Earth. You cannot corrupt planet Earth. You need to do the work to get the gold out from the ground. You need to take, a rake or plow, how it's called in English, and to dig it out from the ground. The gold is distributed around the world in a decentralized manner. It's not like just one single place where the gold is, but you can find it in various places. Of course, we have some places where there is more gold, but in general, it's very dispersed, very distributed. That's why all the civilizations around the world could get into gold without, them relocating and mining gold in only one spot. So Satoshi's idea was to really make sure that we have this distribution of money around many participants and not only in one single point, in one single hand. And mining solves this because it makes sure that anybody around the world can participate. The rules are very straightforward how to mine Bitcoin, and if you spend energy, you can do it. You can even mine on a piece of paper with a pen, but it's super inefficient. But this way, Satoshi made sure that he is not the one owning all the Bitcoins, and he makes sure that anybody can get to them, but expending energy so the coins are distributed. The third problem was predictable money creation. Look at the governments. Right now in the US, they raised the debt ceiling for the 78th time. It's insane. Imagine you have a family, you have your own company, and you're borrowing money, and for a 78th time you claim like, yeah, I borrow some more, but I will return it in the future. It would never work. But suddenly, somehow the governments can do it, and they can print infinitely. And we as people have no control of it. So what mining solved is predictable money creation. This is what the guys in the US are doing, but we don't want that to happen with Bitcoin. So maybe you saw this chart maybe a couple of times. The blue line is the line of money of Bitcoin being produced during the years since 2009 till roughly 2140, which is when approximately the last part of Bitcoin will be mined. We will get to 21 million, and there will never be more Bitcoins than 21 million. It will be slightly below that. If somebody wants to have 100 million, well, they can create their own tokens and coins, which happened a lot of times. That's why we have 20,000 other shitcoins. But with Bitcoin, it's not impossible. It's not possible. You would need to really create a consensus, which I cannot imagine people voluntarily deciding to dilute their own money. Within the governments, you have no choice. You need to somehow accept it or ideally opt out to Bitcoin. And the orange line is a line that shows us the inflation rate of Bitcoin. So you can see that in a couple of years, we'll get to less than 0.006% of inflation. So right now, the inflation of Bitcoins is like 1 something percent. And very soon we'll be like sub 0.01%. of annual inflation. You cannot beat this, like you cannot change the rules, and this is beautiful. And this is where Bitcoin comes, with mining comes into place to assure that these rules cannot be changed. And number 4, the database security. So what prevents anybody to creating a new version of blockchain, new version of the database? Well, mining again. With mining, we can make sure that there needs to be a lot of people colluding together to doing 51% attack to making sure that they can create a new alternative version, which right now with Bitcoin mining is virtually or practically impossible. With all the miners around the world creating or having at least 50%, it's literally very hard. And we don't need to count the pools because the pools doesn't control the machines, they don't control the hash rate, they're only aggregating that. So making sure that the Bitcoin is the most secure database in the world, that's why we have mining. If the governments would be thinking what Bitcoin might bring to kind of separation of money and state in future, they would attack it much sooner, and they would attack it from the mining perspective in the first maybe year or two, where they could have gathered enough hash power. Today, it's practically impossible to do. So thanks to mining, we have the most secure database in the world. Something like a proof of work comes into place. So the proof of work was the Hashcash in 1997. The proof of work is mining. What it does, it's showing to everybody around the world that that particular miner every 10 minutes is the one who's receiving the reward for their work, and they are the ones who can add transaction to the global database called blockchain. So that's the really crucial concept, because everybody around the world can verify, like the same with a Rubik's Cube. If you solve it, anybody can verify that you really did the work, and that's very crucial part. If we would need to trust somebody that, yeah, I solved it, trust me, I will show it to you next time we see each other, that would be different. With proof of work and showing the hash of the block that it really meets the criteria, anybody can verify in the second. The Rubik's Cube comes into place again. Very physical representation of what it means to mine Bitcoin, because it's random. If you close your eyes and you don't see how you start, it's just really a random thing of solving it, and maybe in 1 year, in 2 years, you suddenly put it together and you can show to anybody like you really solved it. Analogy that I use when I explain people easily what is Bitcoin is, imagine that we here, all of us, having 10 playing dices that we can roll. And we agree with each other that who will be the first one to put, let's say, 5 dices with a number of 6, so 5 sixes at the one roll. That's the one who's gonna win the competition. And here's the one who's gonna, let's say, receive $100 for that work and can go to a flip chart and write down the new transactions. So we start to play the game, we all of us roll the dice and look into the dice, like who really have 5 sixes. If nobody, okay, we do it again and again and again. And suddenly after 10 minutes, somebody of you raise a hand and says, look, I made it, I rolled the dice and 5 of them are sixes. All of us can look at their dice and his dice and verify that he really did the work, because he couldn't do it otherwise. He would need to roll it, and there needs to, we need to see that. If we verify that, we all can agree in a consensus manner that that's the person who won the competition. He will receive these $100 and go to a flip chart and write down all the transaction that happened there. Suddenly, let's say the competition is interesting, people can win $100, so more of us come here to play the game. What happens then? What happens with the dice is like this 5 dice will be thrown sooner than every 10 minutes. So what do we need to do? We need to raise the difficulty of this mining, because we want to keep every 10 minutes some winner, like somebody winning the competition. That's how Bitcoin works. Every roughly 10 minutes, miners around the world solves the computation, finds the right solution, and add a block to the blockchain. So if suddenly there is double of us here playing the game, suddenly we do it every 5 minutes, and we don't want that. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna rise the difficulty. How are we gonna rise the difficulty? With deciding like, okay, right now, the target is to have at least 8 of the dices to have number 6. And you can really physically see that it's more difficult to throw that. Less winners. And again, we get into roughly the time of every 10 minutes, somebody winning. And this is what Bitcoin is doing on every 2 weeks. Bitcoin as a protocol looks into the history of mining for 2 weeks and count how often on average was every Bitcoin or every block mined. If it's more than 10 minutes, the Bitcoin will put make it easier to find the number. If it is less than 10 minutes, it will make it harder, adding more sixes that you need to put in.